The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar. We're going to begin in just a few minutes. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on becoming an insights-driven enterprise. Today, every organization knows that there is value in analytics. However, knowing that there is value is very different than being able to extract it. In this webinar, we will discuss the difference between data-driven and insights-driven organizations. We're going to showcase a plan for becoming an insights-driven company and then demonstrate attributes and case studies from companies that have successfully implemented these strategies. My name is Michael Loban, and I work at InfoTrust, where we provide marketing executives with tools and insights to increase online revenue. We work with global brands, Fortune 500, and Internet Retailer 1000 companies such as L'Oreal, LegalZoom, Men's Warehouse, and Nestle. I'm joined today by Boris Evelson. Welcome, Boris. Boris is a vice president.
Morning.
Boris is vice
good morning,
president.
Michael.
Hello, how are you? Boris is a vice president and principal analyst at Forrester Research. He has more than 35 years of experience with enterprise software and applications implementation, management consulting, and strategic advisory skills. Boris is a leading expert in business intelligence, a set of processes, methodologies, and technologies used to transform raw data into meaningful, useful, and action-oriented enterprise information. Boris, we are glad to have you with us today.
My pleasure, Michael. Thank you for having me.
We are recording this webinar. Also, our previous webinars have been featured in Forbes and Adweek. As a follow-up to this webinar, we will send out a link to the recording and links to the articles in these publications. Please remember to post questions in the chat panel, and we will address them as they come along. We would absolutely love to hear from you, to have questions, comments from you, and our goal is to make this as useful, as actionable as possible. So if you're doing something this in your organization, please use this opportunity to ask us questions. I am confident that Boris will be delighted to answer some of your questions, so make them tough and challenging. So what's on our agenda today? Well, first we're going to look at the opportunities. Why are organizations investing so much money into becoming data-driven? And what does it actually mean? Obviously, with every opportunity, there are certain sets of challenges. So what we want to do is define what are the common challenges. And if this is something that you're about to take on in your organization, what are going to be the challenges that you might face in the near future? Then we're going to look at the solutions, and then we'll also have some time towards the end of the webinar to answer your questions. And with that, I would love to pass this over to Boris to begin with some of the opportunities.
Excellent, Michael. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to present. This is one of my favorite topics. For those of you who haven't attended my webinars in the past, I have been in this business for over 35 years. And for many years, things have not changed in this market, that they've been kind of status quo. But in the last couple of years, we started noticing a very interesting journey to the next level of maturity. So Michael, next slide, please. And what that next level is all about data-driven versus insights-driven. So most of you on the phone, I will make an educated guess that you are already a data-driven company. You probably have some kind of an enterprise data warehouse, so you have departmental data marts at the very least, and I'm sure you have some kind of a data governance, data curation process that oversees your analytical data, and I'm sure all of you have some kind of a data visualization, a querying, reporting, dashboarding mechanism out there. So our working assumption is that today you are probably already data-driven, but are you really insights-driven? Are all those components that I just described, are they really producing actionable insights that you can turn into real tangible business outcomes? That is the real question. So on the next slide, Michael, please, in order to move along, in order to help you get to the next level of maturity, we at Forrester are now using this new terminology. So insights-driven companies now should be using what we call systems of insight. It's kind of our Uber overarching term that covers business intelligence and analytics and big data and data and information management and artificial intelligence, etc., etc. Why did we choose this term, systems of insight? Well, very simply because all of you on the phone are familiar with systems of. You all have systems of record. You all are, as retailers and CPG companies who deal directly with your customers via e-commerce platforms, you all have systems of engagement. So systems of insight is really just the next term that everyone feels comfortable with. Now, on the next slide, this is really what it's all about. This is the crux of the problem. This is almost like, dearly beloved, we are gathered here today because, well, this is the because. It is because insights-driven enterprises are predicted to grow 8 to 9 times. Now, this is not, pay careful attention, this is not 8 or 9% faster, but 8 to 9 times faster than non-insights-driven enterprises. And as a result, here's what's going to happen. On the next slide, Michael, about a year ago, we predicted that these insights-driven businesses will steal about 1.2 trillion from non-insights-driven businesses. And as we went along during the last year and we talked to more clients, we looked at more case studies, we got more data points. We are actually currently updating that research. It should hit our website in the next, hopefully, few weeks, and you will see the new number as 1.8 trillion. So if you're an insights-driven company, that's a huge opportunity for you. If you are not an insights-driven company, you are definitely losing a lot of money to your competition. And this is proven on the next slide. So now on the next slide, these are some of Forrester points. So if you are a retailer, what we now see is that your top priorities for business intelligence, for analytics, are all about revenue generating kind of outcomes. So gaining competitive advantage, improving your customer interaction and satisfaction are at the top of your list. So we don't want to minimize and trivialize internal process challenges and compliance and risk reduction. We will talk about data governance and data quality in a few slides, but from the business perspective, it is all about customer-facing activities, customer touch points, and understanding how your customers are behaving. That's really the way that you are winning your business today. And it's not only true for retailers. So Michael, on the next slide, a very interesting trend that we're seeing for CPG companies. For those of you on the phone from CPG industry, increasingly you are also touching your customers directly. So not only are you working through indirect channels such as resellers and distributors, etc., but you are creating your own e-commerce websites and processes. So 33% more of you in 2016. And I apologize, we do have 2017 data, but it's not published yet, but it is definitely a continued increase. So from 2015 to 2016, about third more of e-commerce companies started touching customers directly, and that obviously translates into similar opportunities. So on the next slide, Michael, please, just like in retail, CPG companies also are some of their top priorities are to gain competitive advantage and improve customer satisfaction and develop better products and services. Obviously, being a CPG company, business planning and data quality and consistency are important. Those basics do not go away, and we'll talk about that in a second. But again, just really wanted to impress on everyone that it is revenue generating activities that are at the top of everyone's agenda. And definitely on the next slide, Michael, please, definitely we're by no means advocating that you should forget the basics. Basics such as compliance, which require very stringent data governance and master data management and data quality are still the number one drivers for your data management. So 70% of data management professionals consider data quality and all of the governance processes around that as their top priority. But the next point is really, really important. So we encourage you not to think, if we can stay on the previous slide, Michael, for a second, if we encourage you not to think of data management and data governance only as an internal process. Your top objective should really be is to differentiate your business capabilities based on data governance, which translates into more effective measurement. So don't think of data governance just as, you being custodians of data. Translate your data governance on high quality data into measurable business outcomes. That's what we see leading companies in the space are doing. And very importantly now, Michael, please go. Let's go to the next slide. Very important is that all this really should be translating into tangible outcomes, and we indeed do see some proof. As you see in the second bullet here, that about half of our clients do report double-digit ROI, tangible return on their BI investments, typically achieved within a couple of years. So this is ROI on individual BI investments. So let's say you've got a customer churn problem, you don't understand the root cause, so you put some analytics around it. You collect some data on customer behavior, right? Customer transactions, their social media behavior, et cetera, and let's say you start understanding the root cause. You put forward, you deploy some corrective actions. Customers come back to you, and that's the ROI on that particular investment. When we measure large enterprise-grade infrastructural investment in analytics, such as building a data lake, building a data governance, data quality solution or a process, investing in a new BI platform, or outsourcing your BI environment to subject matter experts. Hard to measure specific ROI, but what we do see is a direct correlation between being an industry leader, and we define industry leaders as those who grow faster than their competitors, those who grow faster than industry averages. So industry leaders do invest about a third more than a third more into BI as a percentage of their IT budget than industry laggards. So great direct correlation. So hopefully this demonstrated lots and lots of opportunities in this market. So before we talk about challenges, Michael, anything else from your side on opportunities?
Absolutely. Thank you. I would say another opportunity besides the one that you've mentioned that we want to call out is the rise of e-commerce. Especially in the CPG sector, CPGs are heavily investing in their DTC or direct-to-consumer capabilities and in developing models to deliver their products directly. E-commerce will amount for 10% of all CPG sales by 2022. This means that the amount of excellent customer-centric data that organizations will have access to will go through the roof. When properly analyzed, this can be a gold mine for your enterprise. Even if there is no outlet for consumers to buy your products directly on your site, consumers are using mobile devices to research your products. And here we can see that customers are using mobile devices to research cereal, soap, cosmetics, and other generic products that they buy in stores. These insights can help you tailor your message and connect with consumers at the right time when they're researching product options or making a purchasing decision. And obviously, we have the data that Boris is showcasing in terms of the rise in BI and the ROI in leveraging BI. And here we have information about how customers are engaging with our brands, engaging with our products online. So an amazing opportunity is to connect, if you will, those two and being able to mine this information and be able to connect with customers in a very different, much more compelling and one-on-one way. Here's an example of our work with one of the top 50 brands. Although they did not sell online, they understood the need to connect with their customers and learn more about them to personalize their offerings. The goal of this campaign was to help them increase loyalty program registration numbers across a number of international sites. As you can see, this campaign increased registration rates by a couple 100% across different markets. And then this data was used to personalize coupons, to personalize messages, and help them get ready for their direct-to-consumer efforts that took place the following year. So with all those opportunities that are available to us, what are some of the challenges that we need to be mindful of?
Exactly, Michael. So obviously, all of these great rosy numbers that Michael and I just presented in terms of better customer conversion rates, improved customer satisfaction, and basically impact to your top and bottom lines, they do not come without an expense. And the expense is all about the challenge. So you know, here's in this particular quote that we heard from our a large CPG client, their global CIO, responsible for their the technology side of their operations. Just like I said at the beginning of the presentation, they do have the data, right? The data is there, but data does not translate into insight automatically, and there are multiple reasons for that. And then on the next slide, you know, there are definitely a lot of reasons, but if you were to force me to identify one single top reason, I would say it's this one. As I said, I've been in this market for 35 years, and while technology has definitely improved by leaps and bounds, the people and process part of the equation really hasn't changed much. And out of the people process equation, this continued disconnect between business and IT is still a huge challenge. As you can see on the right side of this slide, our our clients from the business side continually tell us that all they really want is getting their jobs done. And they tell us that it's not that the single version of the truth that we all seek is not important to them. Of course, it is very important to them. But if that single version of the truth comes at the expense of delivering an analytical solution, delivering answers to questions too late, then that's not good enough for them. And therefore, we as technology professionals, when we look at the left side of this picture, if we overly concentrate, overly emphasize single BI and analytics platforms, single streamlined architecture in order to achieve that single version of the truth. Again, you know, please take my advice with caveat. These are all extremely important, but this should not be done at the expense of being too late to the market, and we'll talk about that in the solutions. In the solutions part of the presentation. So it's almost like having the cake and eat it too is important here. We do want to deliver a single version of the truth, but we cannot take months to do that. So that's one very significant challenge that we continually see. The next challenge on the next slide, Michael, please. You know, before I describe the challenge, I want to kind of impress on you on how much data you all have out there. So this is an amazing slide. So those of you who have more than 100 terabytes of data, the number of these companies has doubled or even more than doubled in 2017. So your data volumes continue to grow by leaps and bounds. But on the next slide, Michael, you know, the window that you have into that data doesn't really grow. So when we ask our clients all over the industries, and definitely in retail and CPG industry, this is true. When you do your own self-assessment of how much data you process, you'd probably tell me about 50%. Well, my apologies, my sincere apologies, but I do not believe you, because every time Forrester analysts and consultants peel a few layers of the onion, we see much bleaker picture. We see that 20 or less percent of your structured data and 10 or less percent of your unstructured data is being turned into information, turned into insights, turned into actionable insights. The rest is sitting there as dead weight. So we definitely face that challenge. On the next slide, please. You all know what's behind this, right? No matter how many enterprise-grade BI solutions we deliver, everybody still runs to Excel, and that's a subject for a whole other discussion as to how do we wean people over Excel. And then we also have some industry-specific numbers. If Michael, you can take me to the next screen, that in retail and in CPG, the challenges, the top 5 challenges are exactly the same. They're in slightly different order. But data security and privacy are continue to be challenged. Lack of budget, right? You can't make money without investing. In BI, as we said, growth of data is overwhelming, and obviously continued disconnect between business and IT is a huge challenge. So that was kind of my side of the story. Michael, anything on your side in terms of what do you see in challenges in these industries?
I think one of the challenges that we see is the quality of the digital analytics supply chain. In other words, the quality of data from the moment of collection until the moment data is displayed in your BI system. Right? Yeah, here we can see Mark Pritchard, CMO of P&G, taking on this challenge head-on. And really, there are many contributing factors. Marketing tags or pixels that are deployed across your websites are not firing properly. There is, as you pointed out, Boris, there is a lack of automated data integration. Companies are still relying on spreadsheets and manually copying and pasting data. And difference in reporting across your platforms. Organizations report the data that is coming from their media platforms is often vastly different than data that's coming from the analytics solutions such as Adobe Omniture and Google Analytics. And then the question is, well, when you try to inject or pull all this information into your BI system, and then you realize that the KPIs or metrics look differently depending on the source of the data, how are you supposed to address that information? And so all these factors contribute to deficiencies in the digital analytics supply chain that are costing organizations millions of dollars. And later we will try to address this challenge, but again, something to point out is the quality of data that travels from the moment it is being collected to the moment that you begin analyzing it.
All right, now we're getting to the good part. So obviously, hopefully, Michael and I have set you up with the opportunity. We talked about the challenges, so now we are going to spend the rest of the presentation on solutions. So how do you actually move from data-driven to insights-driven? So on the next slide, remember how much emphasis I put on the disconnect between business and IT, and a top priority to get things done quickly. This slide explains the why. So we are today, Forrester believes that we are today in what we're calling the age of a customer. For the last few years, we've been past the age of information. Age of information is now table stakes. Today, we are in the age of a customer. Customers rule, right? I myself am a great example. As you can imagine, in my job, I travel all the time. I travel pretty much every week. I rack about 200,000 air miles per year. So getting off the airplane and getting to my business meeting is quickly is very important. So years ago, as I'm sure you all know, I didn't have any options when I got off an airplane and the taxi queue was very long, or if there were no taxis, I didn't have a choice. Right? So basically, taxi companies dictated to me how I would do business with them. Well, you all know that that's no longer the case. When I get off an airplane, I push one button and I get on my mobile phone and I get Uber. And if Uber tells me that they are 10 or 15 minutes late, or if they want to charge because they are busy, I push another button on my cell phone and I get Lyft. And in different localities, I have more options. So basically today, I, as a consumer who has a mobile phone, which has ubiquitous connectivity to products and services via cloud, I call the shots, right? The vendors, the providers of these products and services, they do not call the shots. I call the shots. So unless these companies can follow my preferences and tastes and alliances and requirements, they're going to fall behind. And with that in mind, we actually quantified that type of opportunity. So on the next slide, Michael, I'm going to quickly demonstrate Forrester business agility model. So we looked at what does it mean for a business to be agile? What does it mean in quantifiable terms for a business to really react quickly to ever-changing customer and consumer tastes and preferences? And we defined 10 dimensions, 10 attributes of the business agility, and these are hopefully all self-explanatory. On the right side of this picture, you see a dimension of channel integration, right? Obviously, if your channels are integrated, you are much more responsive. In the middle of that of the metrics, you see infrastructure elasticity, right? Obviously, if your infrastructure is elastic and can shrink and grow its resources and capacity as needed based on customer demand, you're much more agile and responsive. And then with that in mind, we plotted the evaluation of, I think our database has about 300 or 400 public companies on how aware they are. So now in this quadrant, you see the vertical axis, which measures awareness of these business agility capabilities, and the horizontal axis measures the execution capability of these business agility requirements. And on the next slide, Michael, I'm sure it's no surprise to all of you on the phone, is once again, just like the ROI on BI is higher, the investments in BI is higher for industry leaders that you saw on one of my initial slides. Business agility is directly correlated to your overall business performance. So higher performers on the right side of the slide who are industry leaders, as you can see, their business agility capability are all over what we call the formidable category. And on the left side of the slide, the industry laggards, their business agility capabilities are all about paralyzed or clueless categories as we define them. So we do see and show and can demonstrate direct correlation between business agility and your overall business success. So then the next question comes, Michael, the next slide, please, is, what is it that we, data analytics, business intelligence, data visualization professionals, what is it that we can do to help our business become more agile and close that gap between business and IT, business who wants to get things done today, and IT who wants to get things done right, which sometimes takes a while. What is it we can do? Well, we can practice what we at Forrester call Agile BI or Agile Analytics. It has 4 key components. Agile software development, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. We do know that in the modern world where things move way too fast, a long waterfall type software development life cycles just take too long. We need to create agile organizational structures. To give you an example, overly centralizing your support for BI and analytics may create too much bureaucracy. So you need to find some middle ground between organizational silos and centralization. You need to practice Agile BI processes, data governance that puts up too many restrictions and takes too long to get anything approved is not agile. And last but not least, you do need to deploy Agile BI platform because, for example, not to beat up on relational databases, they still kind of are the dominant force in analytics and business intelligence, but relational databases are anything but agile. They're scalable, they're stable, but they're definitely not agile. So we need to supplement them with different technologies. And on the next slide, Michael, we are basically throwing a word of caution to everyone. Please do not fall behind competition, because a lot of your peers, a lot of your competitors are already practicing these agile BI best practices, and we have some proof points on the next slide. So, for example, in terms of creating an agile BI organization, we definitely see, more than half of retail and 62% of CPG companies are creating an organizational center of excellence for BI and analytics. And in order to facilitate that, about half of all of the retail and CPG organizations are appointing a chief data officer and chief analytics officers to oversee your analytics efforts across your organization. And in terms of creating agile data governance, data stewardship, data quality, master data management processes, again, more than half of your peers and competitors have already done that. So kind of the key message from this particular slide is do not fall behind on all of the best practices from the people and process part of the equation. And on the next slide, we'll start wrapping this discussion with a type of new technologies that you all should be supplementing your traditional older or current generation BI. So this is now where we're getting to that systems of insight. Remember, we talked about BI is there to help you become data driven, but that's already table stakes. That has already been commoditized. So what type of technologies do you need in addition to people and process best practices that we just talked about, that you need to become insights driven? Well, you need systems of insight. What is systems of insight? Well, it is your current BI environment, but you need to make it agile. You need to make it very responsive to ever-changing customer requirements. That means you need to empower your business counterparts, your end users, to be self-sufficient. And 59% of you from retail and 64% of you from CPG are already doing that. So again, advice is not to fall behind your competitors. Big data is very important. As I said, relational databases still play and will continue to play a very important role in this technology equation, but they are not agile. So you need to supplement your data warehouses with data lakes, with no SQL, non-relational solutions, because they are much more scalable, they are much more agile. BI cannot remain a standalone application. When BI is a standalone application, if your dashboard is not really embedded in your transactional and operational applications such as ERP and CRM and supply chain and risk management and logistic applications, then your BI is not contextual and it's not actionable. So definitely start thinking and start deploying embedded BI applications, which then can become contextual and actionable. And again, at the bottom of the slide, you see that a lot of your competitors are already doing that. Obviously, AI, artificial intelligence, is beginning to play a huge part in this. So in terms of interacting with machines in a more cognitive way, using natural language processing to ask questions and get answers. And not only the new systems are providing answers to the questions that you ask, they're also providing answers to the questions that you didn't even ask, as in predictive and prescriptive analytics. We call that a technology and environment application suggestive BI. And last but not least, continuous learning and improvement is really, really key, because nobody gets this right the first time. You always need to monitor the outcomes of your BI and analytics processes and applications, understand success and failures, and almost immediately learn from the mistakes and leverage best practices for continuous improvement. So all these technologies, business intelligence plus Agile BI plus big data plus contextual and actionable business intelligence, suggestive, predictive, prescriptive BI with continuous learning and improvement processes is indeed the technology that you need to get you to the next state, systems of insight, which will help you become insights driven. Now on the next slide, some other best practices. Here the 5 differentiators that we see between data-driven businesses and insights-driven businesses. So these are kind of 5 key principles that we encourage you to embrace and deploy in your operating model. So first of all, it is that insights really need to be embedded in your operating model. So we no longer build and deploy ERP, CRM, supply chain, etc., e-commerce applications, transactional applications, and then put insights on top of them or side by side. We basically embed insights into all of the transactional apps and processes from the get-go. Insights are immediately available and actionable. So building a dashboard that's flashing a red light that your customer sentiment is low is not really actionable. That dashboard should also pop up with some predictive and prescriptive recommendations as to what kind of a campaign you should put in place, what kind of a customer service actions you should execute. Then BI becomes insightful and actionable. We already talked about experimentation and continuously learning. That's a differentiating factor. Your insights capabilities are strategic, right? You don't do them just for the sake of doing them, just for the sake of intangible, better decision making. You deploy these insights and you measure the ROI. And when you do get a tangible ROI, you are indeed becoming insights-driven company. And last but not least, insights to execution and being an insights-driven company is not a centralized function. There should absolutely be a centralized function such as Insights Center of Excellence or Insights Competency Center. But a centralized only organization is very bureaucratic and has a lot of red tape. So you absolutely need to deploy insights at the point where they are executed into action. So your lines of business, each individual department should have their own insights team so that they can put them in action right away. And I'm going to start wrapping up by providing a few case studies of those companies who have done this successfully. So on the next slide, please, Michael. Again, lots and lots of best practices. So first best practices, don't just build metrics for the sake of metrics, but build holistic metrics from holistic data sources. So Macy's is a great example. They created a complete 360-degree view of their customer data. They've aggregated and centralized customer preferences and purchase patterns, and therefore they reported significant improvement in their marketing and merchandising relationships. Cole has built an integrated data source that kind of aggregated and made it simple and made it seamless for them to look and analyze both e-commerce and brick and mortar inventory, and therefore their view of logistics and became much more efficient, allowing them to improve their ship from store capabilities. Obviously, the next best practice is to measure your cross-channel metrics, cross-channel impact, because that's really key. So still only about half of your peers and competitors are able to measure these omni-channel experiences, but customers consistently tell us that they do expect consistency across all engagements. So creating a channel agnostic, touch points and metrics and measures is extremely important. Definitely do not overlook the capabilities of AI. I know AI is a scary term, but believe me, it is not scary when done right. So we see some great examples. For example, this German retailer Otto has implemented AI-based merchandising, and they were able to predict customer purchasing behaviors 2 weeks prior to purchase. And as a result, the results are amazing. So they reduce their surplus inventory by 20%, and they reduce their product returns by 2 million per year. I mean, that's an amazing return on AI investment. And on my last slide, the next slide, Michael, please, some more best practices. So you definitely need to optimize your online influence across the touch points. So GameStop is a great example. They track influence revenue, which refers to the revenue that they generate based on actions that customers take on their website, and I take those actions, no more than a couple of days from the customer interaction, and influence 37% of their online sales. Next best practice is definitely breaking out, trying to break out and succeeding to break out logistic cost reporting. When done right, logistics really drive faster, more reliable customer delivering experience. So definitely deploy a best practice of measuring metrics for return rates and return dispositions and restocking costs and liquidations, and that can absolutely translate. I don't have a specific case study, but definitely numerous customer conversations prove that these can translate into gains in both your direct cost savings and indirect value from your improved customer sentiment, customer satisfaction. And last but not least, capture the last mile delivery metrics and analyze them and improve them, because last mile delivery can often reach and exceed 50% of your total fulfillment costs. And these total fulfillment costs are about 27% of your general goods before gross margins. So they can eat in your profitability. So that's definitely a great metric to track. So hopefully I've given you lots of best practices and lots of examples of how companies benefit when they move from data-driven to insights-driven. Michael, you have some other examples for us?
Absolutely, Boris. And I really like the example on GameStop and Macy's and what they're doing. I would say two other areas where we see organizations really stepping up their game just to get themselves ready to better take advantage of BI is one, starting with where they are collecting information and how they are collecting information. An average enterprise website has between 50 to 75 marketing pixels technologies, and a lot of times when we sit down with people responsible for those technologies, they do not know how all of those tools are set up. They are not sure on who is the end recipient of data from each of those technologies, not to mention who is responsible for configuration and ensuring accurate data collection. So might sound like a rookie mistake, but it's very common to have missing, broken, or duplicate tags that are present across the website that are not firing properly. And to this day, very often we meet executives that at the end of the month, when they're delivering their monthly or quarterly reviews, they have to come up with explanations why, for example, Facebook conversion pixel data is not present for the 2 days out of that month. And in those situations, you have to consider that it's not just that you're losing data for 2 days, you're impacting data when you do month-over-month analysis, you're impacting data in your BI and in other downstream systems that you end up using for insights and for analysis. So absolute vigilance regarding tag integrity and data integrity is absolutely critical. And while you're at it, while you begin to review how those tools are deployed, what information they are collecting, we always recommend doing a centralization of analytics and tech management across all of your digital properties to make sure that you have standards and consistency. Having standards for tracking and analysis, even KPI measurements. If you work for a multi-brand enterprise, a lot of times we look at 20, 30, 40 different websites across different markets, and we ask them, how they compare across different KPIs or across a set of standard metrics, and we find out that each site or each market, each region has their own KPIs, which makes it very difficult for an organization to see how different brands, markets are performing, and overall how the organization is doing. So if these things are done right and consistently across all platforms, it is becoming a lot easier and faster to analyze this information and to reach your insights and be able to activate the data and not just focus on data configuration or data integration. And obviously, time to insights is what we all want to accomplish, right? Is being able to understand what needs to happen faster. And when organizations are successful at enabling digital capabilities, Boris already shared with us so many metrics and KPIs for what can happen to your business, but a few more just to call out. One is its ability to do things faster. Just a few slides ago, Boris talked about agility and the ability to quickly amass data, analyze it, and pivot your business or pivot your marketing campaigns as necessary. Organizations can operate with more granularity, attaining access to more detailed consumer behavior, and being able to make decisions not on overall how customers are looking at the website, but how different customer segments are interacting with their brands. Being able to look at customer segments based on metrics such as customer lifetime value. And allows organizations to stay more connected and be able to have this one-on-one relationship with the client. Now, one of the things just to point out, organizations that are going through this process, a lot of times they're trying to focus, well, what can be our small win? What can we show to our executives to get things started? Unfortunately, a small win is not enough these days. Right? A small win is just not going to get where you need to be to stay competitive, considering what other organizations are doing. So for leaders with the eyes on the prize, and if you want to generate the revenue that you need to keep your business successful, it's really about connecting analytics capabilities across the whole enterprise and really becoming a customer-centric organization that is insights-driven. And here is just an example of the work with one of the brands that we worked on that has a direct-to-consumer presence, so selling directly to customers by becoming a more customer-centric organization and by leveraging things that Boris have been discussing about analytics and BI. They saw a 15% incremental return on that spend. So again, without spending more money on advertising, being able to generate more revenue. And 2.5% increase in total purchases across their 3 top markets. And the last one is the ability to group customers in groups based on lifetime value. As you know, the concept of lifetime value is very dear to our hearts here at InfoTrust, as a lot of the work that we do is helping organizations understand customer lifetime value, but then also being able to tailor their marketing campaigns based on a customer lifetime value segments and groups. We've done a number of webinars now with Peter Fader, who is professor at Wharton Business School, on lifetime value. So if that's something that you're going through right now with your organization, please let us know, and we have plenty of content to get you started. So at this point, I would again encourage you to post questions in a channel. But while we are posting questions, maybe a question for you, Boris. So we now went through this webinar, and the organizational people who attended this webinar might be thinking, well, how do I get started, right? So what should my first 30 days of doing this look like? What would you recommend to them, Boris?
Yeah, exactly, Michael. That's really the crux. So the last thing that I would recommend to anyone is to start from what we call a bottom-up approach. This is an approach that we've seen companies try for about 20 years, or start building some kind of a holistic repository of all of the data. We used to call this data warehouses. Now, in addition to data warehouses, we supplement them with data lakes. So such a bottom-up approach, in absence of tangible applications that you can deploy very quickly, literally within a few days, is a doomed approach. So it's not that I'm recommending not to build such repositories, but before you start building them, I suggest start quickly by deploying almost like a rubber band and scotch tape proof of concept prototypes. The example that I gave earlier on customer churn is a great one. So don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try to understand all of your customer churn. So let's say if you have millions of customers, right? Don't try to understand all of their behavior. Pick a small, palatable sample. Maybe a few thousand customers. Collect data on their behavior. Analyze it. Understand the root cause. Even with the modern technology, if you can't do that within a few days, then you're probably overbuilding, over-architecting it. Do something simple, and then understand. If you understand the root cause, put the corrective action into place. Maybe you need to make some slight changes in customer experience on your website. Maybe you need to make a slight change to your contact center and how you interact with your customers. So whatever changes you need to make, put them in place and see if customer churn is indeed reduced, right? That's, you really should be able to have that complete turnaround type of a process within, as Michael said, within 30 days, right? If you're trying to create such a prototype that lasts longer than 30 days, you are overbuilding, overcomplicating it. So build this prototype or a couple of these prototypes, make sure that there is a full turnaround in, actionability and results within 30 days. And based on your results, then go and seek funding for larger infrastructural projects to now start addressing the needs, not just of the small customer subset, but of your entire customer population. So that's kind of my advice on get started. So Michael, I actually have a selfish question because very often clients who come to us with these challenges, one of the questions they always ask, well, Boris, Forrester, do we do this on our own, or do we partner with an outsourcer or a system integrator or an agency like InfoTrust? What's the benefit of not doing it on your own? I mean, I have my point of view. I'd love to hear your point of view.
Oh, sure. It's an interesting question. We also discussed this in our previous webinar, this Forrester, where we provided a lot of data points on what organizations are doing. There are many pros and cons to do this in-house, as well as to partner with an outside company. A couple of things that I would suggest to look into is, one is your overall understanding of the vision, right, and where you want to take your organization, right? If after this webinar, it's still maybe not clear how you want to build this ecosystem within your organization, well, then starting to do it yourself, right, will probably not take you to the right place, right? You should have a very good idea of the architecture, what you are trying to accomplish, in order to get to that in a good way, right? Agility and other things really, don't matter if you have a hard time figuring out the end result. So with that, that's the first question to ask yourself. The second question is, let's say you are clear on what your outcome is, right? The type of data lake that you need to build, not from the technical standpoint, but again, from more of a business standpoint. If you understand what you'll be accomplishing, the next question is people, right? So technology, people, and processes are the big three things when it comes to implementation. So from people standpoint, is do you have right now the team who has the time, knowledge, and resources to be able to do this? The second one is tools. Right? So what types of tools do you have access to? Or are you going to need to go and buy or get licenses for the BI solutions and for the other solutions? And you currently have the processes to accomplish this, right? If you look right now on your list, again, just those three things, people, processes, and tools, and you realize right now you do not have any of those, then probably a partnership with an organization can help you get to this phase much faster rather than trying to do all of this yourself, at least at the beginning. And then once you get to the point where the solution is built, and when you're able to start showing return on your BI investment to your management team, then it'd be an easier probably argument from your side to say, well, now we need to start building this in-house, right? Because to build all of this in-house at the beginning might be a lot more costly than at least doing a pilot with an outside partner. And then that pilot can help you get more credibility within the organization and help you get more resources to do this in-house. I would say that's how we begin looking at it. But Boris, would love to hear your feedback or thoughts.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I totally agree with all of the points that you said, and I would add three additional points. So definitely want to re-emphasize what you said at the very end, Michael, that because doing these quick proofs of concepts, literally within a few weeks, definitely within a month, is critical. If you start doing this, if you start deploying these proofs of concepts for longer than a month, you are going to lose attention of the key stakeholders. The attention span is really short these days. So if you're going to build up all of that, stand up all of that infrastructure in-house, it is definitely going to take you longer than 30 days. So working with an outside provider who already has the infrastructure and has the ready available resources, and indeed doing this proof of concepts within a couple of weeks, definitely within a month, is a best practice. So that's my first point. The second point is that this is still largely an art, right? That there is obviously a lot of components of this which are science, but there are a lot of components that are really all about best practices and lessons learned. And even if you personally, build 2, 3, 4, 5 of these solutions, that's no longer that is not enough. You cannot accumulate enough best practices and enough lessons learned from just a few implementations of these. And therefore, I truly believe that it's only a systems integrator consultant who cumulatively, right, across all of their hundreds or thousands of projects that they have done, accumulated these hundreds and hundreds of best practices and do's and don'ts and lessons learned, and basically they're going to run your project based on the mistakes that they already know other clients made, right? Not on your own mistakes, is a very, very, kind of a strong advice that I provide. Learning from your own mistakes, just takes too long. So learn from the mistakes of the others. And my last point is that this disconnect between business and IT is still out there and will be out there for the foreseeable future. So an external, neutral, objective party, right, that can sit on a table and mitigate this disconnect and close that gap is also extremely important. So that's my point of view.
I absolutely agree with the point of objectivity of the conversation. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And Boris, it was a pleasure having you today, joining us at the webinar or leading this webinar. And we will send out the recording to the attendees as well as to those that were not able to make it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.